all. As you come in or as you're getting food, feel free to help yourself to continue the food. I think there will be a sign-in sheet also if you see that pass around. If you could sign into that also. Basically, our last forum was about healthcare, and Ken Reese is going to come up and talk just a couple of issues about that and things that we're going to be working on as GSS. But after that, I'm going to hand things over to Lori Melville, the controller, and we have a good all-star team of university officials here to answer questions. First, I think they're going to go over the questions that the GSS provided them as far as issues having to do with parking and reimbursement and other things, and then we're going to open it up to the audience here. And then around 12:30, the provost will come in and answer a few more questions, which will be more just a general informal of he can't answer everything at this point. He's only been on the job for about 20 days, but he'll be able to give you some insight on the direction of the university and things going forward at a high level. So hope you all enjoy it.
Thank you, Jimmy. I'll be extremely brief. This forum is on billing, not healthcare. But in response to last month's healthcare forum, in the GSS, it was decided to revive the standing committee on healthcare. Myself and Maritza Rosales are jointly chairing this committee, and we are planning the first meeting of that committee next Thursday at 12:30. I encourage all graduate students, regardless of whether or not you're a senator, to participate in this committee. We've got a couple things that we would like to do. Number one, we want to set up a formal mechanism through which grad students can submit their issues, complaints, feedback, suggestions regarding the healthcare system. Number two, we want to come up with a way to establish a dialogue between ourselves and the healthcare administrators, be it through more forums like last month, through direct person-to-person contact, monthly meetings. So we're going to need people that are interested in communicating directly with the administration to organize that in a subcommittee. And lastly, we need to come up with a comparison of how our plan stacks up versus what else is out there. So we need individuals who are looking to try to get an idea of what other health plans are out there, what we'd be eligible for, how does ours stack up to the national standard. So if any of those things appeal to you, or if healthcare in general appeals to you, you want to volunteer for one of these subcommittees, please come out next Thursday, 12:30. We are still working on trying to find a room, but I'm going to write my email address up on the board here. I'll get you on the listserv for our committee, and we really appreciate your participation.
And now I'll hand it over to Lori et al. And I'll let them introduce all of them. So.
Good morning, everybody. First, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to address these questions. James was kind enough to provide us with a copy of, I guess, a summary of many of the standard questions that have come up. And these are questions I think that we've talked about intermittently, but just we have an official forum to discuss those. As a matter of introduction, as James said, my name is Lori Melville. I'm the controller here. My area is responsible for the most part, for what you all deal with the bursar's office. And the bursar's office is responsible for billing tuition, housing, room and board kind of fees, and then any mandatory fees, which would be similar to the health fee and the tech fee. Non-mandatory, what we call non-mandatory fees, such as parking, are handled right now outside of the student system, simply because we had a legacy system that has been around since 1989. So there really wasn't the functionality to do a lot of complex things other than just billing the basics: tuition, room and board, and applying financial aid. So as you know, we just put in our student information system. We went live over the summer. This is our first official, I guess, full semester of using the student system. So as we're looking right now, we're looking just to get the basic functionality done, get that nailed down in terms of making sure the tuition is being billed properly, aid is being billed properly, and the basic, what we call mandatory fees, are being handled appropriately. The next phase, starting probably, I would say in the early summer, is to take a more comprehensive look at the various things that we could do differently, such as parking. So as we start going through some of the questions that you had, some of the answers that I'm going to be able to give you right now probably aren't going to be exactly what you're looking for. And I'm not going to be able to give you too much in terms of specifics just because, to be quite honest, we don't know. We're 4 months into the new system. We have to see what kind of functionality we have. And then there's a possibility we'll be able to do some of these things in a little bit more effective and efficient manner. Also with me today is Laura Artwell, who is our Director of Procurement Services. She is in charge of the accounts payable side of the house and the reimbursement side of the house. And then Beth Nakamovitz is also here from Access Services, who is, well, primarily, lucky her, responsible for parking. So hopefully we've got... And travel. I'm sorry about that. So hopefully with the three of us here, we should be able to answer most of the questions that you have and then anything that you happen to come up with. I know we may not be able to hit all the questions. I gave James my card, so I know that after all of you have had a chance to talk, think about things, digest it a little bit, you may have additional questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer those questions, for our next iteration. So what I wanted to do is start first with the questions that were provided to us, and the main question, the first question, revolves around monthly billing for graduate student fees. Namely parking, health, and tech fees. Okay. What we have related to the health fee and tech fee is we have two options that are currently available. We have a program that's administered by TMS, Tuition Management Systems, that allows you to take a 10-month period of time to average your bills and pay it off in monthly installments via check, EFT, or credit card. That program has a $65 fee associated with enrolling in it, so that's not a freebie, and depending on the types of charges that you're looking to bill, it may really not be very cost effective. There's a second program that the university runs called Tuition Made Easy. Now that's run completely in-house, and there is no fee associated with that program. What you would have to do is there is an application form on the bursar's webpage. You would need to fill out that form and list out the fees that you'd want to pay. And then what we would do is take it as a direct payment from your checking or savings account over a 10-month period. The period starts in June and ends in March so that we can have the final fees paid by the spring deadline, by the March 15th deadline. So those are the two options that are available, and you can use that. My personal recommendation is use the Tuition Made Easy because there's no fee associated with that. But if you choose to, or you want to use a credit card, TMS is really your option right now. Now we are in the process of doing a request for proposal from a couple other entities that do this TMS type billing. I don't think we'll probably have any bills back or responses. Probably February or March is really what we're looking at. So we may be able to reduce that fee, but for right now, we have a contractual relationship with them, and that's the fee. There's no really way to minimize that or reduce it or tier it based on the amount of charges to be stabilized over the year. Okie doke. Any questions about that?
Yeah, how long has the Tuition Made Easy plan been around? Is that new?
No, we've had it about 5 years? 4 years? 6 years. 6 years.
I'll take.
For posterity.
For your enjoyment.
Yes, sir.
How do you enroll in programs?
For the TMS, there should be an application on the bursar's webpage, and Tuition Made Easy also has another application on that page. So you would just use the Tuition Made Easy. That would go straight to the bursar's office, and then they would take care of it from there. You need to provide, obviously, your bank account information so we can make the deduction. Yes?
Through the payment system, it looks to me like the only credit card you have the option to pay with is the Discover.
Yes.
What's the status of that? Options?
We have tried to explore other options. I'm going to back up a second, sort of go into a little bit of history of why we're using Discover. When the whole issue with credit cards first started gaining a lot of steam here at the university, we looked at the cards that were out there and the options that were out there, And there were a number of discussions with administrators, with the deans, about how we wanted to handle the fees associated with it. Some of you may know or may not know that if a company or a university accepts a credit card, there's a fee that we have to pay to the credit card company for just accepting the payment. That fee ranges any place between about 1.9% of the transaction up to, actually there are some that are about 4.5% of the transaction, depending on the type of card and how the transaction's being processed. So because of that fee associated with it, there was a lot of discussion about how we wanted to handle that, if it was a fee the university could absorb, or if we needed to charge it out. And at the point that we were looking at it, with the volume we were looking at, it just was not going to be something we could build into the tuition rate to cover. The consensus was that it wasn't fair to make everybody pay for that credit card fee when only some people were using it, because it would be an add-on to the tuition, built into that tuition rate. Discover offered the lowest fee across the board, so that's why we accepted Discover. We have been looking for the past couple of years to see if MasterCard and Visa will do anything with us. So far, they haven't budged. So that's really why we're stuck with Discover as the card that we accept, and then we have to obviously pass that fee back on to the student or the parent, whoever happens to be paying it. It's a catch-22 because the fees are so expensive. You know, we're looking in the several $100,000 range for the university to take that on, and considering the tuition structures and, you know, everything else associated with that, it just wasn't feasible. The deans weren't supportive of it at that point. Administration wasn't supportive of it, so it was the only way that we could offer that convenience, because, you know, as a practical matter, there are times when that's really the only way that the payment can be made. Other times, and that's why there's been a lot of push towards MasterCard, Visa, or American Express, some of the travel perks, frequent flyer miles, things associated with that. You know, it just, if we didn't have a cost-effective mechanism to do it that would be fair to the students that weren't using the credit card mechanism. So long story short, or to answer your question, right now Discover is the only card that offers us a reasonable fee. The other charges, the other cards, the fees are way up there. It's just not going to be cost-effective to accept something else at this point. Yes, sir.
So the fees are passed on to the person paying anyway, right?
I'm sorry, what?
So the fees that Discover charges, those are handed on to whatever, like if I made a payment with Discover, I would be charged that extra.
Right, right.
Like, why isn't it, if I'm willing to do that same thing for MasterCard, if it's 4%, why not?
Because one of the other things that comes into play is, it's not working so well, oh well. One of the other things that comes into play is that if we were to start accepting other credit cards, Discover's told us they'd jack up that fee. So we'd be paying much higher fees across the board. I mean, the credit card companies really don't play fair. They try to get you coming and going. And unfortunately, we're going to be paying much higher fees across the board. So that's the reason why. Okay. Any other questions on the tuition or kind of fee-type billings?
I'm sorry to work on this, but so let's say you do expand the options for credit card payments, and Discover does jack it up, and let's say it's 5% across the board. If you're passing on to the students anyway, the students don't always have much capital to pay off these payments. So giving them options to the credit card seems to me like it would make sense. And Discover, I know, but I think most students here use National City or some other bank through which they're not offered a Discover card. So
yeah, we can go back and look at it. We've been looking at a couple different models through the online bill payment system to see what else they can do for us. You know, it's just that the initial feedback we had, we did poll some students, and they're like, no way, we don't want to do this. I understand what you're saying, that, you know, and it's the same point that you're making. It's like, if we're willing to pay it, why not give us the option? It's our money, we have to eat it anyway. And we can go back and we can explore that. It's just when we initially went through that process, the feedback was, there's no way. It's like, we don't, if you're going to raise all of the fees across the board like that, you know, we don't want to do that. So, you know, we can take a look at that. You know, we've talked with a couple other universities that are doing that, and from an internal control perspective, you know, where you get your accountants and your auditors involved in this, there are some real weaknesses in accepting that as a payment mechanism. There is one university that we've been corresponding with on and off to see if they've been able to address some of those issues, and I think they've gotten about halfway there, but not all the way there. So if we can come up with a way that's going to keep our accountants and auditors happy that we have an appropriate, you know, internal control environment, you know, we'll definitely consider that. But right now, everybody's a little bit leery of it.
I just want to interrupt you. We have a mic and we're recording this, so if you can just wait to ask your question until you have a mic, I appreciate that. And so do all the other guys.
Okay. So I was just wondering, do you have any idea about how many students even use the Discover Card payment option?
You know, I don't have that right at the tips of my fingers. I mean, Charisse, do you have some numbers?
We have about, I say, per semester, we have about 400,000 students who use the Discover Card.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else on cards, tuition? Okay, then we can move on towards parking. Now again, I said you weren't probably going to be very happy with this answer because I really can't tell you too much. What I can tell you is that PeopleSoft now gives us some additional flexibility so that we don't have to worry about having federal aid applied to a non-mandatory fee, which was one of the things that was a major holdup in our old system because we couldn't apply aid or not apply aid based on other criteria. So this is something that we are going to explore, but we have to wait till the system is stable, which is basically about a year after implementation. So it's on, we have several lists, as Charisse, who's been working on the implementation, can attest to. You know, we have what we call our phase 1 issues and then phase 2. We're going to start picking our way through those phase 1 issues, and this type of non-mandatory billing, having that roll through, is one of the things on that list. We know that it's been an issue for students because, you know, you have to come up with that fee all up front, and that's not how your stipends or your cash flow works. So, you know, in the interim, there's not a whole lot we can do. I mean, it is what it is. But moving forward, we're hoping to have some additional flexibility so that that can be billed through your tuition bill, so that we don't have to worry about federal aid being applied against a non-mandatory fee. And you still have that ability to use, you know, that Payment Made Easy or TMS or some other kind of third-party entity to spread those payments over, you know, a semester or a 10-month period to give you that little bit more flexibility. So unfortunately, I know that's not the answer you want to hear today, but it is definitely a high priority on our list simply because we know that it's been an issue for the graduate students in particular, but for our undergraduates as well. So, you know, there's not a whole lot we can say about that, but as we get closer to that, there is a committee that works with Beth on parking issues. And as we get closer to the point that we'll be able to consider this, there will definitely be feedback through Beth's group and interface back to the implementation team so that we're sure we're considering all the issues that need to be dealt with. Okay.
Just a quick question. Tuition. This is backtracking a little bit, and I apologize, but
okay, no problem.
The tuition made easy. How does that work with students on stipend? Is that I know there's billing, some of it comes from the department, it's done on a monthly basis, but you have to still pay for your own health fee. Is that something that can still be coordinated on that program?
You can choose the amount that you want to spread over 10 months. So if you know that the only thing at the end of the semester that you'd have to cover would be your health fee, you can elect just to distribute the health fee over, you know, a semester or over a 10-month period. So you could annualize that and say, okay, just take this much out of my checking account. We don't choose the amount, you choose the amount.
Okay. And then is there a way also to maybe change the current bursars page that is the bill pay page to make the tuition easy or tuition made easy a little bit more advertised
visible.
Or visible?
We can do that. Yeah, we can do that. Okay, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
So going back to the question about your parking, and you weren't really able to help, but I just was wondering kind of what prevents people who do have a monthly stipend that are almost essentially employees, but not really, we're still considered graduate students, what prevents us from being in the same system to get our parking taken off of our stipend, even pre-tax, because I've heard that that's how they do it, and just on a continuous basis too, because most of us are here
For the duration.
For the whole time.
Okay. Well, you've got two different questions there, okay? Now, the first, in terms of the pre-tax, because that's an easier question to answer, the pre-tax aspect of parking is actually part of the university's fringe benefit program. It's defined under the Internal Revenue Code as a part of our cafeteria benefit plan. It's available only to employees who are benefits eligible, and as a graduate student, you are not considered a benefit eligible employee. You don't get retirement or anything like that. We have to take the taxes out that they make us take out, and that's all that happens with your pay. So unfortunately, we can't take it as a pre-tax deduction. I asked, I'm a member of, well, a group of controllers. We correspond and meet regularly. I actually put it out to our group to see if anybody does it that way for graduate students, and nobody does, because it is defined. It's Section 132 of the Internal Revenue Code. It's out there as a qualified transportation benefit, and it all is under the umbrella of a cafeteria benefit plan for employees. So unfortunately, that's not an option. I mean, we'd definitely do it if we could. Okay, to answer your second question, I'll come right back to you. To answer your second question, pass the mic quick, right? The second question, we've been looking at a couple different things. We have to develop an interface between the parking system and PeopleSoft, and we have to do an upgrade of PeopleSoft to make this cost effective. Otherwise, our programmers have to do this twice. We are looking at an upgrade. We keep having some moving target dates. Between December and March is when we're looking at doing the upgrade for the HCM module, which is where the payroll processing and all of that occurs. Once we get that upgrade done and in place, we'll be able to revisit the issue of developing an interface so that we can have that feed back and forth on a monthly basis. But right now, we don't have the programmers that are going to be able to build that and then build it a second time, not considering that most of them are working on the student implementation at this point. So, unfortunately, again, it's a lot of our answers are based on the system and based on just resource availability. With the student system winding down, our resources are going to be coming back and made available to help us in our financial system and in our HCM, our payroll system. So once we're able to revisit that, we can take a look at that and try to get that laid out in a more friendly manner. Okay. I know you don't like the answer, but it's again, it's what it is. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about who decides whether graduate students are employee or benefits eligible employees or not?
It has to do with employment testing. It's like a whole bunch of standards, and it has to do with hours that you work. It has to do with Department of Labor standards. It has to do with a number of other things that intersect. It even has to do with some of the grants. They have some of the rules, but mostly what we're looking at are Department of Labor rules and Internal Revenue Service rules. I can, if we want to revisit the issue, I can ask someone from HR to come and really go through the points that they go through to determine employee, not employee. One of the things that would be different is if you were considered an employee, you would have FICA withheld from your paycheck. So you would have some additional taxes assessed to you. But the overall benefit issue, it's pretty consistent across universities that graduate students and postdocs even aren't considered employees. And it's something unique to higher ed. You don't see this in the real world. If you're working for a company, you're an employee, you're a contractor, those are your two choices. It's just we have this little thing with graduate students who are doing work, but they're doing work to advance their education and not doing work like, I do financial statements, I'm doing work for the university. It's something different. So if it's something that's of interest, I mean, I'm more than happy to see if I can come back with someone from HR I mean, you could discuss that and decide if you want to further discuss that.
I think Ken might have a question that's crossing up line.
Okay.
Postdocs are not considered employees?
Not benefits eligible employees for that purpose.
I was under the impression that postdocs did have their parking taken out pre-tax, were billed on a monthly basis, and were eligible for the employee health plan.
The employee health plan?
Yes.
No, there's a separate postdoc plan.
Yeah, what you're probably referring to is that people regard themselves as a postdoc when they actually are classified in the system as a research associate.
Thank you.
So there's a class of individuals that are working as postdocs that are officially in the system as research associates and they're benefit eligible. Okay, so they may be the types of individuals that you're talking about. We have postdoctoral scholars and fellows, okay, which are paid through NIH grants or get their own money and that type of stuff. They're actually in what we call a special class of employee, and that makes them eligible for a special health care plan. We had this difficulty 3-4 years ago in terms of giving them a new classification so that we could offer them a specialized health care plan, which is paid for by their sponsor, whoever that funding agency or the So I'm guessing that the people that you've identified that get that payroll deduct are individuals that are really research associates, who call themselves postdocs.
Mm-hmm. There are certain regulatory filings that we have to do related to benefit plans, and the postdoctoral scholars are not considered employees in those filings, so when we do our head counts, they aren't part of that. But as Chuck pointed out, we did several years ago go through the process of trying to find an insurance provider to provide benefits similar to our employee benefits for the postdocs, simply because a lot of times they have families, they have children, they need to have some kind of insurance coverage, and that satisfied that need. So that was one of the main things that actually Lynn Singer was instrumental in pushing that. Okay. Oops. Oops. Do you have?
The question I just wanted to follow up about the HR, the Department of Labor, and following up on that. I think there might be some confusion about taxes and so forth, because some grad students are paid with stipend and are taxed, some are not. And I think that's an issue that I think we should maybe explore in the future as far as understanding.
Yeah, I think that would be, I think it would be better if we had a separate session for that. So.
I've got a quick question concerning the tuition made easy. You say it's a 10-month program. It goes from June through March, correct? Okay. If we do not have all of our tuition and fees paid by the middle of October, we get started being assigned a late fee. Does the tuition made easy preempt that late fee, or does that have to be included in it?
No, it preempts it because you have made a payment arrangement with us, just like TMS. You won't get charged late fees with that, provided that the arrangement you have with TMS covers all of your fees. If you miss on your estimate and are underpaying by $5,000, let's say, you may get assessed a late fee. Actually, you get notified from us that, wait, there's a mismatch here, your budgeted amount isn't going to make it cover everything, you need to adjust that with TMS. But when you make a payment arrangement, like through this tuition made easy, you do not get assessed a late fee on that.
Still going back to this, I might have missed, you might have said this, but what is the advantage of TMS over tuition made easy? Why would someone pay that $65?
TMS allows you to use a credit card to make the payment, and you can make payment via check. With tuition made easy, it's direct deposit in reverse. It's automatically going to come out of your checking or savings account each month on the due date. So if the cash flow is the issue, TMS is really probably the better option.
So I just have another question about this. Make sure I'm sort of understanding you correctly here. So you're saying that for Tuition Made Easy, what we have to do is we figure out how much in fees that we're going to need to pay. And then we say, oh, it's going to be $947 this year or whatever. And then I say, okay, then take that, divide that by 10 and take that out every month. Is that? And so that is not saying that I want to pay my healthcare fee, my tech fee, list my fees and just say whatever they add up to, just whatever they happen to be, then take 1/10 of that out every month. So basically we have to do that adding up work at the beginning.
Because we need to have specific authorization to take a dollar amount out of your account. So that's what we need to have signed off on the form.
I understand. Okay, but is there a way that we could make it so that we could say, I want to pay this fee, this fee, this fee. The system should be able to figure out that those fees are going to add up to X amount of dollars, and then I can, ask me if I will authorize that amount of payment every month. Like, wouldn't it be so much? Because especially, changing from year to year, a lot of times our fees change incrementally, and so if we're off by, we could be off by, a few dollars either way, and it could just be a big headache. So I was just wondering, maybe we could automate the system a little more to make it a little more user-friendly going forward.
Explore it, but again, these fees are generally published pretty far in advance, so that by this, early spring, what the fees for the next academic year are going to be. But your point is well taken, that maybe if we can come up with a little calculator or something to say, okay, here's what I think I'm going to pay, leave a blank line for tuition if you don't get full tuition support or something of that nature. I mean, that's something that we could take a look at. Okay, let's see. The next major point we had here was talking about student reimbursements being made via direct deposit as opposed to cutting a check for those items. And it's actually a payables procurement question, so I'm going to hand it to Laura. Is it here?
Too easy. Too easy. Ooh, yeah, that works good. Okay, so I'm going to probably say pretty much similar to what Lori has said on some of the other issues, and that is currently we do have an interface with HCM for the employee reimbursements. They are direct deposited into the account that the employee chooses to have their reimbursement deposited to. So in HCM, the majority of the people, probably 80% of employees, have one banking account, and their entire check gets deposited into that. And when they do a reimbursement through accounts payable, that is the account that the reimbursement gets deposited to. We have other scenarios in HCM where employees may select to have just a separate checking account that they want their reimbursements deposited to. So you can set up more than one account. The issue is currently that those interfaces in that system with between HCM and the accounts payable module in PeopleSoft do not extend to any of the student payables. It is something that, again, is on our list along with Lori's list. It will be certainly looked at as the student system itself settles down and is stable, as Lori indicates. There is a possibility that we may, and we can discuss this once we get more into it, but we may have a mechanism to do a reimbursement and an ACH, a direct deposit, like you may see other, and I'm trying to think, what would they have direct deposit? Maybe their stipends, their check, their stipends, but it would be outside of the PeopleSoft system. It's something that we're just piloting now with vendors, like a vendor like a Cintas or a FedEx. We're piloting doing those ACH payments rather than cutting them a check. So it's going to be a matter of which comes first, the interface between the accounts payable system and the student system. As Lori indicated, we're on a version of PeopleSoft on our side of the house in financials and in AP and purchasing that is currently going to be upgraded probably in the next 6 to 12 months. And it is a total reimplementation of our modules, a total technical reimplementation. So the resources on the ERP team, the PeopleSoft team, to Lori's point, they're not going to want to do this twice. They're not going to want to establish that now and then turn around in 6 months and establish it with a new system. So we do have options. It's going to just depend on resources, the timetable of the implementation of the new accounts payable and purchasing modules, as well as our testing, our pilot testing with ACHs directly into accounts outside of a student payable mechanism. So just, I guess my message is rest assured it's something we want to do as much as you do. We don't want to have to keep sending you checks or have to go to the cashier's office or have them mailed. We would love to have this as much as you do, and we are working toward that as quickly as we can. What's the next major question here? Travel?
Kind of a little confused as to where some of this information comes from travel, but perception is reality, and so if this is what's being perceived, we need to address it. Gwen Nash, who's in the accounts payable area with Laura, and I work on this together from an AP perspective, and unfortunately Gwen couldn't be here. But the piece regarding lack of reimbursement until after proof of conference attendance is totally perplexing me. It's not true, it doesn't happen, it doesn't exist, and so I am wondering what the perception is and where it comes from, and maybe you guys want to kind of give us some analysis. It may be happening in specific departments, and we'll get down to one of your last questions about travel. Whoever is funding that particular travel, their ability to pay, their flexibility with their budget pretty much determines approval for travel. So if there is an issue and people are not willing to approve that travel reimbursement until after it's happening at a departmental level, that's something that needs to be discussed at the departmental level. From a university perspective, there are many ways to pay for those conference fees in advance. If there's a large group going, there can be a request made for a check for conference fees. There are certain areas where folks have got P cards, and P cards, while you're not allowed to pay for airfare and hotels separately, there are abilities to pay for conference fees on P cards. So those are specific things that need to be discussed and can be done. And then as far as the airfare, I'm not sure if you folks are aware, we have 2 preferred travel agencies, both of which have central billing cards that allows whatever speed type, whatever account is being billed, to be billed in advance for airfare, provided the appropriate approvals are in place. This applies to faculty, to staff, and to students. There is no need to be out of pocket for airfare in advance. I know one of the questions is, what's the incentive to book in advance? The incentive is to basically go ahead and book with one of the travel agents, provide the backup paperwork. There is an online website with Travelport that students may not sign up on as a coordinator or an approver, but whoever is responsible for the finances in that particular department that you're traveling against can, and then can book as a guest or as in response for somebody as far as that travel goes. So that travel airfare gets billed directly, is completely seamless, gets paid for on a central university account, and then that account bills monthly to the department operating account, or whichever operating account is paying for the airfare. So I don't know if somebody has some additional specifics that I can try and address, because I want to give it.
I think one of the issues with the airfare may be that students, a lot of whom I've known, and I've seen their experience as well as my own, the advisor always wants the student to find the cheapest tickets that are available. I mean, it's funny, but it's serious too. So my question would be, does this travel agency have any sort of commitment to find the cheapest tickets available so that the advisor can be comfortable with that?
Two things. One, often when you're going for a conference, there are group fares, and both our travel agencies have ability to access specific group fares that as individuals we wouldn't be able to do. So there is a group desk at both travel agencies, and so if there's more than 10 people going, it certainly behooves the group to get together and do it. Number two, the software that exists out there on the websites pretty much are ubiquitous across the board. You're looking at Expedia, you may see a fare that looks like it's cheaper. By the time you actually go in to book, it doesn't actually exist, or it's there without the taxes, and so it looks cheaper. Our travel agencies, basically, if you can do it through the website, there is a $10 additional charge. It's really worth it, and you can talk to whoever is approving that. The biggest advantage of that is that if that, for some reason, that air ticket doesn't get used, our travel agency then has this ticket there, will be able to try and reallocate it the next person this individual tries to fly. With group travel, they have certain abilities to change actually the names of the folks on the list, because that does sometimes happen at the end. The actual airfare, contractually, we have, and I mean, I'm happy to provide that little piece to whoever wants. Our relationship with our travel agent contractually requires them to search for the lowest fare. And as I say, it's pretty much, it's called web sweeping. Its software is ubiquitous to all the various travel agencies, including Expedia, et cetera, et cetera. So there is the $10 fee or the $20 fee that gets added on, but again, that can be justified in that it's not out of pocket. It's something that is available so that they can keep track of unused tickets, et cetera. And if anybody wants to call me, and I can, if you're having issues with any of those issues, there are certainly, things that we can do. The other thing that we are working on, and it's maybe a little premature to announce, but we do manage to earn some discount or free tickets with the university through the university's program with Continental Airlines, for example. And we are working with our travel agencies to figure out a way to see where we can use those. And if you're booking through the travel agency, your chances of being able to use that will go up. But that program will be announced. But it'll be an added carrot to persuade whoever is approving the travel to allow you to book through one of the preferred agencies.
From the student perspective, I think it's probably much more rare for there to be a group going in order to get a group discount, just from our perspective. The other comment I was going to make, you mentioned a lot of mechanisms through which conference fees can be paid for. I am not aware of any of those. I think it would be nice to have some sort of website, maybe even on the GSS website, to put these things on there so that students can see about them.
Well, what we need to do is talk to the folks who are monitoring that website, because they are available and they are out there on the travel website and on the procurement website. So I think we just need to make sure that all those links are there, because if we start to recreate it, then as there are updates and changes, and this is a sort of a pretty mobile policy, it just got revisited now at the Board of Trustees meeting. So as long as we're all connecting to the base, then we're all on the same page. So I think that's great, but we need to talk to whoever is, who's managing the GSS site and make sure that those links are, because it has to be done from your end rather than our end, I believe.
Just out of curiosity, do you know how many, or guesstimate how many students took advantage of the travel agent maybe last year?
Absolutely no clue. I mean, we don't sort of differentiate. I know which speed types were hit. I can tell you which budgets were hit. I can tell you that dollar amount. But provided the signature of the travel, of the supervisor is there and the person is approving use of the funds, our travel agents go ahead and book those tickets. So.
You had mentioned this pay-as-you-go plan or whatever it's called. I forget what it was called through the, which plan was that? Tuition Made Easy. How many current students take advantage of that? Any idea?
How many of those would be graduate students?
The majority are undergraduate students, but we do have graduate students. We had a surge this year on students who were just paying the health insurance and tech fees. I know we got a group of students who walk in all together and sign up for the plan. So there are graduate students, there are professional students on the plan. So it kind of hits the entire university.
again, that may be something that we, from the DSS website, we provide links to the bursar, and when that becomes more visible, that should help you guys to.
Because I personally had never heard.
They can hear me.
I'd be actually curious to know if anyone else in the room had ever heard of either of these programs. So I think that, like you said, perception is reality. And, someone dropped the ball along the way on advertising here because, I personally dealt with both of these things, with all the nonsense that goes along with it, apparently unnecessarily. So I think, the grad students would appreciate if there was sort of a advertisement effort to get this information out there.
Yes, good point. What is the number 4, Lori? I don't know. Departments paying students during the school year. I'm sorry. Someone have a question? No?
What's your number 4? 'Cause we had different versions of this floating around. Mine stopped at 3, so I'm not sure.
Departments pay students only during the school year while they're on campus.
Okay. Okay, the question that was laid out here is departments pay students during the school year while students are on campus and doing research throughout the year. And the question is, is there any way to do a 12-month schedule from being an option currently? The difference is that the comparison was drawn between the grad students and faculty. The main issue is that the contractual period drives the time frame over which we can pay somebody. Faculty either have a 9-month or a 12-month appointment, and that's what dictates how we can distribute their salary. So they may get, we get into some effort reporting issues. They may have their salary distributed over 9 months, and they get paid over 12. With graduate students, because there's no contract similar to the faculty, that it has to be distributed over the period that their quote-unquote contract or their appointment letter lays out. So that's really why it can't be dragged out, or I shouldn't say dragged out, but extended over a 12-month period. There are also some other issues that come into play that really have just come to a head this year. It relates to some tax rules regarding deferred compensation plans. And believe it or not, this situation where you have a faculty who's working 9 months but getting paid over 12, the IRS is considering that a deferred compensation plan. So there are very strict rules that have to be met in order for it not to be front-loaded and taxed all up front. So it's the combination of how the appointment letters are drafted and this deferred compensation rule that really is limiting our ability to extend payment over a 12-month period. Okay. Then, so the last question was...
You know what, Lori, I missed one on the
did you?
self-renewing parking.
Oh. Okay.
We're jumping back a bit, but it's about parking permits for grad students being self-renewing. Basically, it's going to be the same issue. It's going to be, if we can do an interface, they're self-renewing to the extent that if you have your spot and you've waited and got it, you have an opportunity to renew early and maintain the spot. There are two issues here. There's the territorial shortage of appropriate parking spaces and the payment options. The payment options will be, again, something that we will work through. Lori talked about the PeopleSoft upgrade. Along with that, we are actually doing a parking system management upgrade that we are actively doing right now. The parking system management software, however, is shared between University Park, University Hospitals, Case Western Reserve University, UCI, and Case. So, once we get that resolved, the ability to renew and to keep going will depend on the ability to pay for it on a monthly basis. We simply differentiate between cash permits that are paid for in chunks in advance and continuous permits that are payroll deducted. So it's an extension of the same issue. Billing arrangement between university and standard parking. Literally, standard parking manages the parking facilities. The permit sales are done entirely in-house. So I'm not sure that I don't quite understand the question. There are no funds that are handed over to standard parking other than the management fee that we pay them. Our revenue is generated by our parking permits. The price for parking permits is decided internally on an annual basis. It is based on what we need in order to maintain the facilities, the utilities, the snow plowing, the concrete that cracks after so many years, the washing, etc. Standard parking does not get involved in that piece at all. Again, they manage the system for us. They run our shuttle buses for us, but we are definitely, it is our system that they are doing, that they are managing on our behalf. If that answers the question. If not, somebody can clarify. Okay.
There are a few additional questions on here as well, and I think we're covered the majority of them. The last ones that we see. Oh, I'm sorry.
Quick question. Do you think there could ever be a reduced rate for student parking, or is that just something that wouldn't be feasible for your department?
Well, it's not a question of feasibility. It's a question of managing a system that runs, not to bore you, but runs in a deficit. Again, we try and keep those as low as possible. It's a big issue for employees as well as students. Happy to allow you to benchmark, which we do every year when we raise the fees. Pretty inexpensive universally by universities, and certainly even within the city of Cleveland. But, you know, there's a capital plan, and we've got debt to pay back, etc. It's not just sucking a number out of the air. There is, how can we keep these as low as possible but still manage the parking system as it exists? So I know, for example, Lot 46, which certainly most of our undergraduates park in and is available to graduate students, is the brand new structure. It's not so new anymore, it's a couple of years old, but by the North Residential Village. In general, our parking structures, because you're indoor and they're lighted and secured, are more expensive. There was a specific effort made to keep that price lower than most of the others to provide some relief to students. That parking lot is available to, pretty much to anybody. There's ample space. The other two, Lot 44 and 47, which are graduate student parking, are surface lots that have a significantly lower rate than Lot 53, where a lot of the graduate students. There is methodology in the pricing, and it has been thought of. So, okay.
One of the questions is, what is the current policy to report long-term reimbursement times? We have a customer care team in purchasing and accounts payable, and again, that can be something that you can link from the GSS site to our site. The customer care team actually bridges the gap between purchases and payables to make that kind of a seamless integration. They can answer your questions on how do I buy something and how do I get it paid for? How do I get reimbursed? How do I get myself set up as a vendor in the system? We pride ourselves, and I'm getting from this question that this may not be necessarily happening with your group, in that our reimbursement times do not exceed 3 days, 3 business days. That is from the time that we receive that, however, in our office. What we find in a number of cases is that what we receive in our office is not complete. It's not signed by a supervisor. The receipts may not match. The receipts aren't there. They are not marked specifically for a business purpose. And again, this is going to go to the travel policy as well as reimbursements on what you need to get that reimbursed. One of the other lag times that we've found is that you're not, if you have never had a reimbursement before and you are not in the system as a vendor, there is, again, on our website, a supplier form that you need to fill out. And what we get typically is, and this is a live example, the name of a student and I'm not sure if it's a male or a female, and their social security number. And that's it. There's no address, there's no other identifying information, there's no contact information. So I would encourage, as you're, once you're set up in the system, you shouldn't be seeing any additional lag times. I can see that at the department level and at your level, filling out the supplier form and getting it to us, you can't be paid unless you're in the system. We do have pretty, our internal audit team and our external auditors as well do audit our vendor supply database, so it is very important that we get as much identifying information from anyone that's in our vendor database as possible. We, if you do have a problem, we have an email address and a phone number both on our website that I can send to you, James, and again, we can link to the GSS. And it's Customer Care Team-PDS, that stands for Procurement and Distribution Services, that's our department name, at case.edu. We have one person primarily who answers our customer care phone line. She's fabulous. I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of calling her. Her name's Merlis Willis. She checks both with the purchasing agents, with the accounts payable managers, with Michelle if it's a P card or some other issue, and she works very hard to resolve any of those issues. So we certainly do want to hear if there are long reimbursement times. Again, I would encourage you, when you send that information over, please make sure that it is complete, that you have original detailed receipts, that you have authorized signatures on the reimbursement forms, and that everything is complete. And once that happens, it literally is a 3-day turnaround.
My question.
Good luck with that. We don't think that one's working.
So my question is, when we submit a receipt and we know we're going to need to pick up a check, with the lag times kind of variable, sometimes we don't know when to go get the check, and I think it just kind of sits there for a while because we don't know. Is there any way that we can get some sort of email saying, oh, your check is ready? Because if not, I think the check sits there in the office and we wonder where the money is.
Well, we typically process, we process sometimes 100 to 200 student checks a day. We could look at certainly automating that email system. Again, that would probably come with an upgrade to financials as well, because we do have automated emails for direct deposit of the employee reimbursements, and that would be part of that. So yes, it's fabulous. It spells out what it's for, the amount, the day that it's supposed to be deposited, and it works really well. One of the last questions, but if you don't mind if I can finish this last one, is the question of D cards. Well, let me see exactly what it says. Well, actually, there's two last questions. Reimbursement of taxes. The statement here is that students must eat the taxes when reimbursed, since the university policy does not allow for taxes to be reimbursed. And the question is partly due to university tax status.
You want to just grab this real quick? Okay. What we do allow is if the reimbursement is under $75, that the sales tax is not an issue. We will reimburse the sales tax. For large ticket purchases, well, excluding travel, because you get charged sales tax on hotel and on some things on a travel basis, travel should not have tax deducted either. If you're making larger purchases than that, you really should talk to your department administrator about having him or her buy it through the purchasing mechanism, through a P card, if it's eligible to be charged to a P card, or a D card, if that's a possibility as well. You're absolutely correct. It is related to our tax-exempt status that, our intention is to maximize on our ability to reduce the price, in essence, because in essence we're charging something to a grant to a department account that doesn't need to be charged if the purchase would go through the normal purchasing process. We have sales tax exemptions, I think, in 40 states now, so pretty much anything you would buy across the country, we can get sales tax taken off of that. So particularly if your PI is really interested in maximizing the bang for the buck on his or her grant, it really would be to your advantage to do it through the purchasing process, through a PO, you know, even on, as I said, on a P card or D card. So if you have to buy something small, if it's under $75, you can absolutely get reimbursed for the sales tax. If it's over $75, I would really strongly recommend using our official processes so that you don't get stuck with that.
And just to add to that as well, our office in procurement and distribution services also issues to a vendor the tax exempt form. So in the situation where you're not able to use a P card, have your department administrator use a purchase order, et cetera, and you absolutely have to buy this out of pocket, we are able to provide you and your department administrator with a tax exempt form. It is not a blanket tax exempt form. You do have to contact customer care team. We fill them out one by one. It is issued to a specific vendor. They are signed and endorsed, you know, by me. Actually, we can no longer add blanket tax exempt forms with nobody's name in the as the vendor.
So what if we don't know the final purchase price beforehand?
That doesn't matter. You can still use, yeah. If it's, pick a vendor. Staples, you would contact, and the easiest way actually is through our email mechanism, because we have 6, 7 people monitoring that. It's not that you're calling one person and they're busy for that day and they can't get to you. Our customer care team, Alias, we have 6 or 7 people monitoring that, and you say, hey, I need to make a purchase at Joe's electrical shop. Can you please, I need a tax exempt form for this. We will make that out specific to Joe's electrical shop. We'll sign it. We will fax it to that vendor. It will be there, you know, for when you're there to make your purchase. Doesn't matter what your, you know, total is. It's going to exempt you from the taxes on tangible property purchases. Absolutely. After you make the purchase, sometimes we are able to get that tax reversed. We do that a lot. And again, that would be something like, oops, you know what? I totally forgot. I'm not encouraging this, but it happens. It happens. I totally forgot about this. I wasn't thinking. Can you fax Joe's electrical shop a tax exempt form? I'm working with them to get the tax removed. Okay?
All right. Well,
good?
Thank you very much for answering all those questions. If you have any other questions that kind of are unresolved, please send them to me, or I don't know if you guys can maybe stay around for a while. You might or may not. I know you're very busy, but students might have questions for you afterwards. But otherwise, I'll send those questions on to you that have been resolved, and we'll work on collecting all this information, putting it on the website, and making it more visible to graduate students. I think that will be solve a lot of these problems. Thank you very much. Without further ado, or having him wait further, the new provost. Let you introduce yourself.
Yeah. Do I really need this? I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
We're recording also, so
we're recording it. Okay. I better be a little more careful about what I say then.
you can use this if that's easier. But the room's till 1:15.
Well, I am pleased to spend some time with you this afternoon. I've had the opportunity to meet with many times actually, of course, on the search committee. And, is it on? Can you hear it? I don't know. No, I think she turned it off. Tell you stories. I one time, once I gave the opening to a large conference in Columbus, and then proceeded to walk out of the building. A couple speakers didn't have the opportunity to use it. So we've talked about a number of the issues. I know that I was given a list actually of some questions, and I'll talk a little bit about some of these. I've been here a few weeks, and so some of these issues we've talked about, and I'm still learning about. I think this idea of having the forums with different staff groups and groups across the campus is a good idea. I mean, that's really where I think you all have the opportunity to go directly to the source of the information and get some advice. And
I think it also helps you if you do have a question to know who to go to when you have a follow-up problem or concern. But you know, I've been here a few weeks, and I think some of you know my background. I'm primarily an engineering background, materials engineer. I've had a couple different engineering dean positions at a place called RPI Rensselaer, which some of you, if you're technology-oriented, engineering-oriented, are probably familiar with. And then, of course, at Ohio State, and served in a number of different capacities, probably more around research and graduate education. And then, although undergrad in the dean positions, but I was the associate dean for research and effectively graduate studies in engineering, and then also the vice president for research for about a year and a half at Ohio State. So quite a bit of interest in graduate education and some of the issues that you're dealing with. I know some of the questions that you raised. I want to go through some of those. And again, some of these I can give you some general comments on, and some of these I'm frankly going to have to do some further assessment on where we've been here. Some of these, the healthcare one is a good example, where actually I need to understand what level of benchmarking we've done out there in the community to try to understand that one a little better. That's the first question here, and I know that that's an issue, and from what I understand, some schools, medicine and engineering, I guess in particular, provide that, right? Engineering has required that for research grants, for GRAs?
Yeah, all the outgoing grants
okay.
in the school engineering should have all fees covered.
Okay, and then medicine also based on the PI's, interest supports it, or ability of the PI. What happens with GTAs, with teaching assistants? Are they covered? They're not, okay. So, I mean, I will say this, and this is an area where we're going to have to do more analysis. And the reason for that is, number one, you know, having been a graduate student who paid more for my health insurance every month than my apartment and my food put together, when I was a married graduate student, and I was fortunate in doing that because we had our first child when I was still in graduate school, so it would have been a rather expensive proposition without it. But the point is, it's still expensive, and it's something you need to have. Of course, it's something that undergraduates pay for as part of their tuition, not part of their tuition, but part of their total cost here and expense here. It is something we need to look at to be competitive. I think many of you perhaps had the opportunities to go to graduate schools where that was provided by the university or provided by the school or provided as engineering requires by the PI. I think we need to look at that. It is a cost. What I will say, and please, if you have questions on it, I'm going to do more assessment of that, try to understand where some other places are at around the country. Of course, if it's not coming from research grants, if it's for position, just graduate students who are on institutional funds, of course, you have to address that issue. And even with grants, of course, it will depend in part on the granting source, whether it's the federal government or whether it's industry or business, if that's who's providing the resources. And I think we have to better understand some of those limitations also. And I'll be honest with you, this is not a topic. It's a topic that I'm a little familiar with, but not one that I've dealt with in any great extent to really get us a handle on sort of what are the expectations today, where's the competition at, what's the cost, and how we handle it. But I can just say this is something we will discuss in further. I think, and probably best to have another discussion around that at a future meeting after I've had a chance to work through that one a little bit more. Fellowship funding, the points that were made here, I think if you went across virtually every university in America today, they will all say, with maybe just a few exceptions, that they really need to increase fellowship funding. Of course, to do that internally is a challenge, and I think if you just run some simple numbers, you can understand how much endowment, for example, it takes to fund a full fellowship here. Certainly with the tuition here, even at Ohio State, where the tuition was lower, it was almost as much to fund a graduate fellowship in perpetuity as a chaired professorship, because the costs are so significant. So that will be a challenge. I think the opportunity for fellowships to provide some level of support, not full support, is something we have to address. And I'm sure if you looked at we have a capital campaign coming up. If you look at those capital campaign wish lists by the different schools, I think you would find graduate fellowships to be on that list of priorities, along with chaired professorships and some other undergraduate scholarships and some other. It's usually in that top three, and so I think that will be a challenge for us because of the total cost, but it will be a priority of the next campaign. You know, as you indicate here, the opportunity for you to compete on national fellowships is an important opportunity. I think one, if we're not there in terms of faculty engagement, you know, school leadership engagement through their office, for example, a grad dean or some other office within a school of engineering or school of medicine who works with students and works with faculty to help them write and first of all, be made aware of what are the competitive fellowships, first of all. That's the first thing. And then secondly, to help you write competitive proposals for those fellowships. I mean, that's something that, again, I will follow up on and see where we're at on that. And if you have some specific, you know, anecdotal concerns or comments in your school around that, let me know. I mean, send me the email saying, I'm in this school and, you know, they don't have a clue about how to do this or whatever. I mean, send me that information and I can follow up and better understand that. But I would agree with you, we need to be competitive. And if it's simply a matter of getting quality proposals written, particularly if the student's able to, you know, provide some of the work there, we need to work on that. So I will just say that's another priority that I will look at. I guess a few other things. There were some issues about. Not me, right? About graduate, it's probably that one, yeah. About graduate programs, and we are gonna, you know, as you know, there is a process by which graduate programs get reviewed and by external teams. We're also probably this year gonna do, or early next year, or over the next year and a half, do over the next year, make cross 2 academic years, do a more cross-the-board graduate program review. I think, as you know, that the NRC reviews will be coming out of graduate programs soon. PhD programs, we'll see what that looks like. We'll probably also be doing an internal review across the entire campus to really get a sense of what the quality is, what the productivity is, what the scale is of our different PhD programs, to compare those in part, see how they align with the institutional priorities. I think, as you know, we have a strategic plan. My goal as a provost is really to take the leadership along with the faculty and the leadership of the university in implementing that strategic plan. That plan has identified specific areas of focus, topical areas, I think, as you've seen, energy and environment, social behavior and ethics. You know, there's a number of these design. There are these 4 alliance, certainly health area. There's the 4 alliance areas, and then there are some sort of sub areas of those. Origins, probably advanced materials, there's a few of those. And then, of course, each school has its own strategic plan, or the College of Arts and Sciences, in which they identify focus areas of their academic programs and their research areas that ideally, in many cases, align with the institutional goals. So I think we're going to look at the current programs, see how they align with those priorities, see how productive they are, assess their quality to the best ability we can, because ultimately I think it's going to lead to determining which programs we focus on, which programs with new resources or reallocated resources we focus on and make investments in to make them better. And then which ones perhaps do we decide they're not as relevant, they're never going to get there. If we want to raise the quality of our academic programs in our university, we need to reallocate some of these faculty positions, for example. And there may well be at some point some programs in academic departments that we say we just can't do that anymore. And that's a decision that every university is in the process of making. I just came from Ohio State. We just did a PhD review with the president. You know, when we went through that review, large number of PhD programs, as you can imagine, in a place like that. The president said, you know, we're doing too many things for too many people. We need to do things better. We need to get our rankings up to provide better experience for our graduate students, higher ranked programs, which is important for all of you, both when you're thinking about coming here and once you're here and after you graduate. I think we have to do fewer things better. Ohio State's saying it. If you visited Michigan, they'd be saying it. If you visited Berkeley, they'd be saying it. And of course, a private school like Case Western used to be thinking the same thing. And so that's going to be part of this evaluation process. And it will be, faculty will be engaged. Ultimately, it will come down to prioritization, making some hard decisions. One of the questions was, if we do end up eliminating some programs or deciding that we're going to phase out programs, you know, what happens to the students in those programs? And my approach in the past has always been, you know, those students continue to graduate in that program. So you would never, at least from my perspective, be forced to say, oh, gee, they're going to phase my program into this other program or terminate this program. What do I do? I'm going to be, you know, that's not, I don't ever envision that happening, you know, at least on my watch here. So programs would continue, but they would be phased out in some cases, or students could migrate to another similar program. And we do have departments and programs which are similar. And that's, I think, what you'll find happening at the department level, for example, first, and then some of the academic programs second. So, any questions on that? Because that was one of the questions. So there must be some concerns by somebody that some programs are going to be eliminated and graduate students are going to be left out, without the ability to graduate. So I don't envision that happening. But I think we will, over the next few years, see some consolidations and potentially some things disappear. And again, that will be driven more at the school level than at my level. I mean, the expectations will be the schools need to do fewer things better to get the quality and the impact and the rankings up in their programs that they do retain. And so they're going to have to, the deans are going to be the ones, of course, they report to me, and I'm going to be the one that forces them to make the hard decisions about this and doing fewer things better, where they end up making those decisions. Working with their faculty, working with their students, getting your input on all those different things also, and then ultimately working together to prioritize and then make those decisions, those hard decisions. So I think that covers much of it. There was an issue about the fee, about a technology fee. Is that another question? I think. And there was
no.
The tech fee issue itself, just it should in the Board of Trustees meeting in December be rolled back in tuition, but during the whole process, I believe Chris Ryan in the red shirt back there brought up an issue that I think is still on many graduate students' minds, is that this fee was established without input. I mean, and yes, graduate students were made aware of the fee, and deans were asked whether they wanted to put into tuition or make it a fee. But in talking with faculty and students, that's not necessarily input, just having the deans make the decision. So.
I would agree, and so I think moving forward we need to get your input. Let me just kind of review this strategic planning implementation process. I feel like I've gone through this so many times. We have the strategic plan, we have an implementation process. I think, as you know, a strategic plan, and then after you all graduate, you'll probably be involved in, whether you're in business or industry or academia, working on a strategic plan of some sort. It really, what we've developed here, I think, was quite remarkable, given it was done in a year. I hope you've had a chance to look at that, because it does have a significant impact on graduate education and on the quality of the institution, which is important to you when you leave here, because that's the reputation of this university that follows you for the rest of your career. And really, it was, I think, quite an accomplishment given the time it was done in. It has four major goal areas, a number of strategies and actions and metrics and all that. You can take a look at it. That plan really is sort of a 5-year roadmap. So really, you don't change that every year. You don't say, oh, we've accomplished this and that and this and that. We check it off, revise it. It sits up here. What we will be developing, and I reviewed this with our Board of Trustees over the weekend, is what I call an annual action agenda. And that will happen at the school levels. It'll happen literally within every organization who has a strategic plan, like a school or my IT department or even graduate education or undergraduate education. They will set their own action agenda, but then there will be a committee that then works together, meets, has cross-cutting discussions, and develops an institutional action agenda. And that really becomes, at the institutional level, what we try to accomplish on an annual basis. For example, some of the ones next year really are around, in this first year, and then we'll have a process kicked off that does this on an annual cyclical basis, will be issues like faculty and staff compensation. Student advising and mentoring is another one that will be a priority this year. And a few others, making some investments to get some of these interdisciplinary alliance areas kick-started to try to create some research centers in those areas. So there's a number of those that have been identified. And then there will be an annual process developed by which each, what I call portfolio, and I would really look at the graduate students like I do the undergraduate students. Your organization is one of those in the sense of, in some sense, I'm not sure whether you want to have a strategic plan, but you will have some input into what are some priorities that you have as an organization into this plan. So you will be part of that process and have some input into that annual process for what are your priorities, what is your action agenda for the next year. I presume you have something like that. You have some issues like the ones you just explored over the last couple of months with some of the staff here. If an issue is health benefits, if an issue is mentoring, I know that's been an important topic of discussion and work with your mentoring report, then that could be part of your action agenda. You put that forward literally along with the school plans, action agendas, and then this committee, of which you will have a representative, will then work together to develop that university action agenda for the next year. And that process for FY10, which begins July of '09, really is going to begin here in the next month. And so I'm out now, and I think you've heard this a couple of times, this little spiel, refining and talking about exactly how that process will work. And it will be an annual planning process, and we'll collect metrics, we'll see what kind of progress we made. We'll integrate it with the university budget process in the early spring, late winter, and it will just be an annual process. And so you will have sort of on an annual basis a way in which you can get your priorities, put into the process of developing the institutional priorities and go from there. So that's pretty much all I have. I'd be happy to answer some questions, but I look forward to you working up in your organization the process by which you develop your priorities that then feed into that process. And I'm sure Jimmy will be the one this year that certainly provides that coordination, that leadership, and works in that process. So, any other questions or thoughts? Graduate education is really important to me. I think has the president met with you recently?
Not this year.
Not this year. Well, I can tell you, graduate education is extremely important to her also. We both worked together in our former lives, and it was very important there in terms of what we tried to accomplish and the investments that were made to enhance graduate education. And I really envision it being the same priority level here. And so I look forward to working with you. And my door's always open. Shoot me an email if you have a question. I think it's great that you're getting to interface directly with some of the staff that support you, and that's our job here, to support your success. The mentoring issue, I think that's one we maybe need to get back together again and talk about at some point. I've read some of that report. I haven't read the entire report, and I want to do that. I've been a little busy the last first few weeks, but I commend you on putting that together. And Jimmy and I, was one of the things we talked about in our first meeting. And I want to better understand that and see how we can make sure we communicate that out to the faculty also, who really are the ones that need to understand that. And then to the deans and others, because the deans are the ones that ultimately hold their faculty accountable for making sure that they are, in fact, providing quality mentorship to you as graduate students. So any other quick questions before we wrap it up here in about a minute, I guess? Good. Let me ask you this. How many of you are from Ohio or the Midwest? Many of you? Okay, so about half. Right. I won't go around and ask everybody. Right. How many are PhD students versus, how many PhD students? Okay, so pretty much any master students in here? Okay, a couple of you. Well, that's great. I mean, because the PhD programs are important, and we need to look at, when we do an assessment, we'll look at everything from issues around financial support to time to degree and all those different issues. And so I think you'll see some of that and be involved in some of that assessment as we go forward. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thanks, everyone. And stay tuned to gss.case.edu to see any of the updates and any information that will come out of here. Thanks.